When you're talking about SNAP, if you look, it's largely Democrats. They're hurting their own people.
There's absolutely no justification for Donald Trump and the Republicans to withhold SNAP.
The Democrats have voted 14 times now to prolong all this pain on the American people, and it is so frustrating to us.
I am absolutely going to encounter people that are depending on SNAP. I don't have an answer other than we failed.
So let's bring in our panel to talk about that and much more. Former Republican National Committee Communications Director Douglas High, Real Clear Politics White House correspondent Philip Wegman, and Olivia Beavers of the Wall Street Journal. Good to see all of you tonight. So let's pick it up there, because he had two federal judges today tell the White House, you're going to have to figure out how to pay out the SNAP benefits. And then this from the president, in part on Truth Social, he says, our government lawyers do not think we have the legal authority to pay SNAP with certain monies we have available. And now two courts have issued conflicting opinions on what we can and cannot do. I do not want Americans to go hungry just because the radical Democrats refuse to do the right thing and reopen the government. Therefore, I've instructed our lawyers to ask the court to clarify how we can legally fund SNAP as soon as possible. Douglas High, maybe tomorrow that November 1st deadline on SNAP doesn't hit the way that a lot of people feared it would.
On SNAP and a lot of things. And this is one of the rare examples where you see the Trump administration say, we don't have a lot of power or ability to do things here. And clearly he's trying to shift blame back on the Democrats. This is one place where Democrats have been aggressive on so many things. As you saw the John Fetterman statement, they've been on their heels there, and they know that they're losing this battle, maybe not politically in the states, but right now within the Capitol, they're losing that battle. Tomorrow becomes a big day, and how long that goes. If it's November 3rd or 4th, things should be fine. But if we get to Veterans Day and then certainly Thanksgiving, SNAP and Thanksgiving is going to be a terrible conversation for the country.
Yeah, it is. And also it will start to impact the travel stuff, the trouble we're really starting to see kick up. I landed at DCA yesterday and it was busy, to say the least. And if you get into the holiday traffic, it's going to be much worse.
Yeah, I think the pain is about to be felt right around this time. I think that's why you were starting to see maybe some progress on Capitol Hill. Senators were starting to have a little bit of these meetings, and Senator Leader Thune said he thinks maybe next week after the elections there's going to be some sort of inflection point where they can actually move forward. We'll see, because it has dragged on so long, but the pain is hurting, and maybe that's going to actually start pushing the pressure points that we can get out of this.
Yeah, and you wonder the blame game, whether that will pressure them as well. This latest poll out from Washington Post, ABC News, shows that who's mainly responsible for the government shutdown. The largest group that you see there is President Trump and the congressional GOP at 45%, Democrats at 33%. But Philip, that's actually closed a little bit. Democrats are taking on a little bit of water here, but still way ahead of Republicans when it comes to who's responsible.
My sources at White House are dug in right now. They're not worried about that type of polling, because I think that as we look at the shutdown, at the very beginning, the pain was localized, certainly unfortunate, but it fell on federal workers and on some of these military families. Now it's at risk of metastasizing. It's not just these families on SNAP. It's also these mothers on WIC, the air traffic controllers who are working without pay. And I think that on the first day of the shutdown, Vice President J.D. Vance, he said, look, we're willing to negotiate on Obamacare at a later date once you reopen the government. Now, this week, he's in the White House driveway with the Teamsters, with union members attacking Democrats on another front. This White House feels like as the pain metastasizes, they want it to end, but they feel like they have multiple angles of attack here on Democrats.
And I bet that some of that polling is muscle memory, that when we have a shutdown, it is Republicans' fault. I worked in the 2013 shutdown. It was our fault. We proactively did it. The optics may be different here, maybe the same, but clearly what we see is it's a very different setup for what we're seeing happening in the Capitol right now. It's a very different game.
Well, and the president thinks one of their options should be this. In part, he posts about the filibuster. He says, because of the fact that the Democrats have gone stone cold crazy, the choice is clear: initiate the nuclear option, get rid of the filibuster, and make America great again. So this is that 60-vote threshold that they've not been able to move anything through the Senate. But Senate Majority Leader now, John Thune, his spokesman says Leader Thune's position on the importance of the legislative filibuster is unchanged. And that's something that, listen, if you've been in the minority as Democrat or Republican, you know that's the only tool you may have in your toolbox, and you don't want to get rid of it even when you're in control.
Certainly, and I think that enough senators quickly came out and poured cold water on this, because once you do away with that, it would drastically change how the Senate works. And you might see huge swings in policy depending on who's in power. This leads more senators to come to the table and be able to negotiate. I actually think that President Trump's tweet on this, or post on this, put Republicans on their back foot rather than doing the blame game. They had to be kind of caught in this weird crosshairs of saying, we don't want to get rid of the filibuster, instead of redirecting, as they've been messaging, their blame against Democrats and saying time to reopen the government.
My sources at White House see this as Donald Trump being sort of the bad cop. I mean, he has had nuclear on his mind a lot this week, from nuclear testing to getting rid of the nuclear option in the filibuster. But I think that if you look back at the first administration, Trump toyed with getting rid of this parliamentary procedure. My sources at White House say they know that Democrats know that, and Donald Trump is putting a shot across the bow, even if it does mean some of these uncomfortable conversations with Republicans, because as you mentioned, Leader Thune really doesn't want to get rid of the filibuster. They remember what life is like in the minority, but Trump right now is really eager to get the government open once again, even if it means trampling on parliamentary niceties.
All right, I'm going to try to do true lightning round from here on out, because we got a couple more topics we want to get to. These recent strikes in the boats off the coast of Venezuela and the Eastern Pacific. Here's the president talking about questions about whether we're ready to strike inland in Venezuela.
Mr. President, there are reports that you are considering strikes within Venezuela. Is that true?
No.
You made a decision on that?
No, it's not true.
Okay, Olivia says not true.
I mean, we'll see. I think that he's like someone who wants to have more, unpredictability and use that to his whims. And we've seen him escalating their presence in the Caribbean and with Venezuela. So I think time will tell.
Well, and at the same time, Washington Post reports that Venezuela is pleading with Moscow and Beijing for help amid a buildup of American forces in the Caribbean. Venezuela's President Nicolas Maduro is reaching out to Russia, China, and Iran to enhance its war military capabilities and solicit assistance, requesting defensive radars, aircraft repairs, and potentially missiles. Philip.
I think that you don't send a aircraft carrier and a dozen gunboats down to the Caribbean unless you're serious, and Donald Trump has demonstrated that he's very serious in this regard, even if that means sidestepping Congress entirely. He has ignored some of the Republican criticism about how he needs a declaration of war, even as his own cabinet talks about these strikes as if, it is an open war. I asked him about this the other week, and he said he wasn't going to go to Congress for this because the narco-terrorists, in his words, they will be dead. That's what the president said.
Well, and listen, something else that is probably going to be dead is this bipartisan thing coming through the Senate, which is going to try to force his hand on Venezuela. I mean, obviously, that's not something that the president is going to get on board with, nor are Republican leaders, but there is some bipartisan buy-in on that.
There is, but ultimately I think it goes to Olivia's point that time will tell. So often with Donald Trump, it starts out, that's not true. It becomes somewhat true. A week later, 2 weeks later, it becomes true. This is a huge escalation potentially.
Okay, really quickly want to hit on this FBI plot they say they uncovered for Halloween weekend in Michigan. Kash Patel, the director, says this: the FBI stopped this potential terrorist attack in Michigan before it could unfold, thanks to swift action and coordination with our partners. A violent plot tied to international terrorism was disrupted. This is what defending the homeland looks like. Vigilance saves lives. Doug, there's reporting that it is ISIS connected. We're trying to run that down.
Yeah, this is why I think it was a curious statement. We don't know. There's still a lot of questions out there. I'm surprised to see an administration put something out like this. I was a press secretary, young press secretary, on 9/11 on Capitol Hill. Got a lot of phone calls from newspapers in my district. If I didn't know something for sure, I didn't say it.
All right, Philip, final word. We got 10 seconds.
I think that this is the FBI trying to return to the mission that they wanted. You saw the NBA betting scandal that they dealt with earlier. Now they're going after terrorists. It's blocking and tackling for law enforcement. This is what Kash Patel wants to present.
Well, and it's a Halloween weekend. They say disrupted. It could have been a much different situation there in Michigan. Thank you to all of our men and women who work around the clock.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.